Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson, and I want to connect with you. So go to shiftingculturepodcast.com to interact or to donate. Any donation goes into producing new episodes for you to enjoy. Today, we have a great conversations with Marko Pretorius, a South African that lives in Germany. Marko is the hub leader of All-Nations Hamburg, and he is passionate about catalyzing Jesus movements. I know you're going to be inspired by the conversation that we have today. I know I have been. So let's get to it. Well, welcome, Marko. Thanks for joining us in the Shifting Culture podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today. How's it going?
Joshua, it's always fantastic to hang out with you. So it's a pleasure. It's going well. Thank you for asking.
Good. And you are where right now?
I'm in Hamburg. We're originally from South Africa, but for the last 3 and a bit years, myself and Maxie have been staying in Hamburg.
Hamburg, Germany. How is it like? What's the last year and a bit been in Germany for you?
Maybe one of the toughest things we've ever done in our lives. One of the toughest but most rewarding experiences of our lives.
What are some of the things that were really difficult for you in the last year?
I think it's a lot to do with the roles we find ourselves in. We lead a very multicultural team, and that's been a steep learning curve. Also, we've moved from a city that we really love and that we knew very well into a massive city with a whole different set of challenges that was so new to us. So it's relearning systems and culture in a way that that was quite challenging for us.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of cities are different. What are the main differences that you saw from Cape Town to Hamburg as you started to transfer into that role, going to one major city to another?
One of the challenges for us has been proximity, and it's just the size of the city. It's very difficult to create a sense of community or belonging or team culture in a big city like this. That's been a challenge. It's almost like cities within a city. At least for me, that was one of the challenges. And then I think there's levels of brokenness in a city. Cities are complex, right?
Yeah.
It's very and moving to this city, we just found that there's it's compounded in a way that we didn't know in Cape Town. And then being an outsider in a totally new culture, without a network, without influence, and having to start from scratch, building those friendships. That's something we love, but it's also difficult.
Yeah, that's a hard thing, going to a brand new culture, coming from somewhere else, and you're expected to lead, to grow something that is making an impact in the city. When you were doing that, when you first started doing that, you didn't even speak German, right? So how has it been trying to network and create relationships in the city so that there can be some kingdom impact happening?
Something we deeply believe is that if you address the hurt or brokenness in a neighborhood or in your area or your city, you are given influence, or you're getting an opportunity to speak into a people or a community. So we started asking ourselves, so what is one of the biggest challenges that the community we want to influence? What are some of the biggest challenges that they're facing, and how would it look if Jesus came and he solved that for them? And we just slowly started loving and serving our neighborhood and our neighbors. One of the things that we did was start a language learning groups because we need to learn German, and our migrant friends that we love and want to serve, they need to learn German. So we started learning German together. with German guides around food and storytelling and fun, and that has been a huge joy. And one of the ways that we started making friends. And an interesting thing that happened is that as you start addressing brokenness, you find other people with a similar passion or desire, and they start joining you, start joining your story. And that helped us find like-minded friends that want to go on mission with us. Slowly but surely, we're starting to build a community and a team.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing that you just said. It happened to Meredith and I when we moved to the Middle East. We were addressing a felt need in the area, working with Syrian refugees, but we were also being fruitful, sharing Jesus, and people responding to who Jesus was through stories. And all of a sudden, people started joining, and they wanted to be a part, and they wanted to walk alongside what God was doing in that place. And I think it takes some faithful people at the beginning to walk that journey and to say and give people some eyes to see what is possible. I think there's really just a few weirdos on the edge that really start things out, right? And then it seems like people come and join. And so I just think it's that faithfulness of saying, here's a problem, let's address it, and then we could see what's going on, and people come and join. You and Maxie were a couple of those people that joined us in the Middle East for a year, and it was amazing to have you there and to be with you and to grow in friendship and love with you guys on the ground. That was, I think, some formative time for you as well. What was happening in your life and in your spirit while you were on the ground in the Middle East?
Oh, heavens. That was, looking back, it was one of the best times of our lives, for sure. We, you go with a hope that you would impact the community. Our desire was to really serve our Syrian friends. We just fell in love with the Syrian community there after a couple of trips to you guys, hearing the stories and making friends. And you hope you're going to go and impact these lovely families, but at the end of the day, you are impacted with the gospel. Right? Jesus just reached us, reached our hearts, radically changed my life, Maxie's life, our marriage. This town, this is maybe the most dusty little town.
Yep.
Of nowhere. But if I think back in our time there, I've got the most romantic, memories of our time there. It's just, we had this wonderful experiences with Jesus. So it was a really formative time. And the biggest change was just in our lives and our love, our simple, a love for Jesus and his invitation to make disciples of him. To do it in a way where we point people to him and not to ourselves through simple storytelling and discovering him together and asking, how can we be obedient to him today? And it was wonderful, and it changed our lives. I would say the other thing was the families that received us there, the Syrian families, and their generosity and their openness, a sense that God is moving in that place and and we can be a part of that. Was wonderful. No, there's a lot I can say about our time there, but it had a lasting impact on our lives, for sure.
Yeah, give me a story of your time in the Middle East that was really significant for you, that pointed you towards Jesus.
So we both, me and Maxie, we're quite passionate about inviting our peers, professionals onto mission with Jesus. That's part of our story. That's what happened to us. We had an encounter with God's love. We were still working in Cape Town, such a way that we just wanted to say yes to a life with him and to his mission. So we invited some friends with us to visit us in the Middle East. And we went out to go visit some friends, some Syrian families with them. And I will never forget, we sat down with this one family that just arrived from Syria. We're sitting on the concrete floor, drinking sweet tea, and sharing stories. And the father of this family, beautiful, older Arabic man, massive gray beard, starts telling just a heartbreaking journey, how they lost everything, the trauma they experienced. And they were so vulnerable, it just opened up place for us to talk, right? You know how it is.
Yep.
So then my friend that came with us, Martin, he is a businessman from South Africa, wealthy guy, and he listens to this, and we had prepared our friends beforehand to say, learn some simple Jesus stories, so we have something to share, right? So he taps me and he says, "Can I share the story of the Good Samaritan?" And he starts sharing the story, and about halfway through, Abu Muhammad stops him and says, last night I had a dream. And in my dream, I was running for my life. And I came to a big building that I think was a church. And I slammed on the doors, and they opened the doors for me. I walked in, and I was overwhelmed with a peace that I've never felt before.
Wow.
And he's got tears in his eyes. He stops, he points to Martin, and he says, "And I think you're the answer to that dream. What did you come to tell me?" Martin is like, we are shaking. We encounter Holy Spirit right there on mission with Jesus. We encounter God, and Martin opens up and he tells about how Jesus had met him in a time of pain and hurt.
Wow.
And how it radically changed his life, right? We walk out of there and he says, "I'm selling everything and I'm moving here because God is here," right? And Martin is a fantastic friend and still today, a good close friend and partner of ours. But he later then was obviously realized, but no, God is in Cape Town as well. God is in his office. And he started some really cool things with Jesus there. Yeah, so that's one moment. But it's this sense that heaven has come to earth, that God is moving, he's busy working, and he's invited us to do it with him.
Yeah, and you say that, heaven has come to earth in all sorts of places. Martin realized that in Cape Town in his business, he's there too. It's not us on the edges of mission where we have these mountaintop experiences of God. And, on the edges of mission, you also have these valley experiences. It's a really difficult and hard thing. There's a lot of spiritual warfare that happens. But, it is the everyday places. Jesus meets us along the way, not just here on the mountaintop. So as you were walking along the way, you mentioned briefly you had this significant encounter with Jesus, wanting to join him on the mission while you were a young professional in Cape Town, you and Maxie. What was that like? What happened?
Yes, we both Max and myself early on, Maxie came out at a quite early age. For me, a little bit later in my mid-20s. It felt this desire to a life of adventure with God, that we would somehow have some significant, that we had an encounter with Jesus where we felt like, oh yes, we will somehow go somewhere with him, dreamt with him. And then several things happened to us that was incredibly painful and disappointing. Maxie was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, early on into our marriage. We weren't able to have children because of that. Some really deeply painful experiences. And unfortunately, at that stage, our experience of God was one where he was more Christianity as a religion than something that we were doing out of delight for him. It was more a duty. Was our experience in serving God. So for years, we just threw ourselves into our work, which was architecture, and we loved it. But there was always this question, this nagging desire that there must be more. But but we couldn't find a path to it. We love local church, but often we felt like we're both apostolic entrepreneurial types. We couldn't find a path to pursuing this passion or this dream. And one night I was standing in our architecture practice in Cape Town, and I felt like my life was just in a consistent state of conflict, performance, and hard work. And I cried out to God, and I said, there must be more. I need help. And about a week later, we found ourselves at a birthday party. But there was a couple of people there that were just different. They were living, I could see, it's just a sense of freedom and of purpose. And I can't even remember how it happened, but they ended up praying for us. They laid their hands on us. They prayed for us.
Wow.
And one of the guys started prophesying over us. Just at that stage, I didn't even know exactly what prophecy meant, but he started speaking over us, things that was in my heart only, things that I was speaking to God about. And I would say simply what happened is I felt God saying, I've never forgotten about you. Wow. There's a decision that I want you to make, and I will provide for you guys in making that decision. And then we were introduced to someone that ended up discipling us. We were introduced to Floyd McClung. He was at this party.
Yeah.
And this was maybe the first time in my life that I experienced discipleship. Simple discipleship. And we fell in love with Jesus.
Wow.
And it was Floyd that introduced us to you guys. He challenged us to go on a short trip to the Middle East. And that's, that was the beginning of our story and working with you there. So, but for about 3 years, he just, they would invite us and we would discover Jesus together, and they would love us into the kingdom.
Wow.
And so that has made me and Max also fall in love with again, simply just discipling people towards Jesus.
Yeah.
Church.
And, in that time, Floyd was doing it a lot through stories, through discovery, through asking questions. He was probably being a little bit like Jesus in that way. Jesus was asked 168 questions in the New Testament, and he gave an answer, like a solid answer to 3 of them, and everything else he asked another question. And he asked questions back. As I've been living my life, I've tried to come to this place of asking more and giving the answer less. What impact did that have in your journey towards Jesus?
It was a radical change for us. Radical change. Floyd early on had spoken to me about this. He said, he had so many things that he taught us, so many principles that had a radical impact on us and our practice at that stage, and our clients and our family. But one of the things were that leaders serve, and when you're allowed to serve, you influence people, and when you influence people, you disciple them. And a part of that serving is asking questions, is listening rather than speaking. Yeah. And he was masterful at asking questions. And so I fell in love with the art of doing that and watching him do that. What specifically changed for me, what helped me was I always struggled with the idea of evangelism.
Yeah.
I'm finding out that my motivation is more apostolic. But I have been evangelized in my life, and it was an incredibly uncomfortable experience for me.
Right. Yeah.
And so what I came to learn from Floyd is that I can move into any environment, and I can ask questions sincerely, not guiding questions, but sincerely wanting to understand and love people. I can ask questions, and the moment people feel understood, they listen. So if people feel understood by you, even if they don't agree with you, they'll listen to you. And so it really opened up a whole new world for me on how to meaningfully engage with people and introduce them to Jesus.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As you came back from the Middle East and you were in you were in Cape Town, and you started to work a lot with young professionals, people in the city, business people, and started to figure out, how do we follow Jesus in the marketplace, in business, as we're interacting with each other daily. What did that look like as you move from a place where you were on the ground in a setting where you basically have all day to interact and engage in so-called ministry work, and then back into a place where you're working with people that they have this day job, but there isn't really a separation between life with Jesus and, their work in the marketplace. How did that come about? And what are some of the things that you learned in that process as you pointed people to live with Jesus all day?
So I'm going to attempt to answer this with a lot of humility, right? Because we don't have a lot of experience or necessarily success with this, but I'm passionate about this question. It was, I believe, what led us back to Cape Town was definitely, we felt the leading of Jesus. It came from a place of prayer, just to say. So it didn't start with strategy or anything like that. We felt a deep desire to go back, plant ourselves in the city, and go and practice there what we've learned. And so after praying, we were drawn to one specific location, which was a business premises, business friends of ours, and felt led to open a co-working space as a place that could be a gathering place, a place where we could be church, could be business, could be offices, and it was in a very busy street within Cape Town. And so from there, we would just start going out, meeting people, and regularly meet together to pray and invite people on mission with Jesus, right? Build community around mission. So two things I learned was everybody wants and needs discipleship.
Yeah.
And to raise the bar in terms of discipleship. And the second thing is that real deep, authentic community happens around mission. And I would add to that what we experienced was that an integrated life where discipleship, passion, family, business, church, work, everything comes together is possible. And if we want to see a movement in the city, we need to solve this problem, because city is complex. It's busy. There's so many different affinities. And so a lot of people are looking for a slower life, looking for purpose. And what we want is more simplicity, just an integrated life. Right? So we try to practice this. This led us to finding a bigger house close to the city that we called Crowded House, and we took this on with a couple of friends. We moved in there, and this became. We also had a couple of rooms open where every now and again we had people stay there, or to come and rest, or just people that needed a place to stay. And around the dinner table, we started a small church that we called As We Go. And the way we framed it is we said that this is a halftime place. The game is on the field, but we'll meet here together every now and again to encourage and support each other. But everyone is called to reach their neighborhood or their business. Let's resource and support each other to do that. So, and that seemed to resonate to the community that we wanted to influence and serve. It was a place where they could find healing, refreshment, discipleship, strategy, and community. But we constantly went out. It was on mission together. To reach our city. And out of that, a bunch of creative things started happening, because people felt like they had a place where they are encouraged to dream. And they were given the simple tools to listen together to Holy Spirit, and simple tools on how to point people to Jesus, through storytelling, through question asking, through listening. And so it seemed to work. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it reminds me of, one of the elements of movement DNA that Alan Hirsch talks about in The Forgotten Ways is missional, incarnational impulse. It's the ability to go out missionally, but then go deep uh, incarnationally. As you were planted within a part of the city incarnationally, like you had to be there. It wasn't hey, I'm going to go on the weekends to this area, do my little mission work, and then go back home. You had to live there. You had to be a part. It was, something, as you called it, as we go. It's we're here together on mission, and we're doing it. And I think that's really something that I don't see a lot of, is that incarnational space of, I'm talking about America at the moment, as I'm looking at, people that want to impact cultures and places in the city. Sometimes they're going to move, but most of the time they're going to go out and then go back to the suburbs and, drive their car into the garage and not talk to people. But you have to be in and among those that you serve if you're really going to serve and point to Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was one of the most rewarding times of our lives as well, because the city is ruthless in that way. It wants to know, why are you here? What do you have to offer? What are you doing? Do we want you? Legitimacy becomes a big question. Why are you here? A lot of guys, people would ask us, and that shaped our approach to discipleship. And we had to adapt. We would start developing a language as a community. We would say we have to fail forward and be okay with failing, and trying new things constantly. And there, I would say, doing it out of a place of intimacy and delight with Jesus is so important. If you're stuck on tactics, you're going to fail. But if you are adaptable, tactics and strategies are deeply important. But if it's going to be principle-based and out of a place of delight and intimacy, I think you've got a chance.
Yeah.
South Africa has the same problem. We've got gated communities where you never have to encounter brokenness. You can move from your office to your house to the shopping center in a triangle. You never have to see the pain of the city.
Yeah.
But if you really plant yourself in the city and you make friends with people from a different culture and a different economic background, it is the greatest joy. If you really make friends there, it will enrich your life in a way you never expected.
Yeah.
Can I share one encounter that I had that really deeply impacted me? I met a young Xhosa guy from the Xhosa tribe in the street that we were working in, and he was working in a clothes store. And we struck a conversation because my friend owned the brand of the store, and I realized quickly, this is such a creative, gifted young guy. And he told me he writes stories. That's what that's his passion.
Yeah.
So I asked him, send me some of your stories. So he sent me some of his stories that evening. I read it. It was beautiful. I commented on it, and he started asking me, because now I showed interest. So he wants to know about my life. So I shared about Jordan and some of what our passion is, and he said, "Can I interview you? Can I write your story?" And so we met up in a coffee shop. He's a real hipster, so we went to this hipster coffee shop. And he asked me, "So what are you guys doing?" And at that stage, we were saying, "Okay, we want to address some of the brokenness in our city. What's a problem we can solve? We want to address the housing crisis that South Africa has."
Yeah.
So we got a couple of creatives together, and we were designing a low-cost housing, a modular house for people. So I told him about this, and he actually knew the community that we were attempting to do this quite well. And he said to me, "Marko, you guys can't just be another white man with a conscious attack that is going to try and your colonial approach come and solve our problems. Nobody's going to follow that, right?" And it so struck me, his honesty, and it had a huge impact on me. And I mean, we became deep friends, and we started doing these things together. He actually became our writer. He would write for us, and he did our research for us, and he would be our spokesperson. And it really shaped us. Another time he said to me, why are you keeping quiet about these things? Why are you so shy to say what's on your heart? Why are you so apologetic? As a white man. That's what he told me one night. And so he had but he was still on his way to Jesus. But this relationship had a huge impact on me and the way I approached the community that we were serving. So if we're willing to give ourselves to the city in that way, it could shape us, and it will help us shape our approach to sharing the gospel in a way that it could really be good news to the community that we want to reach.
Yeah, and so, I mean, he was saying, if you want to know what is good news for the community, you probably have to go and ask and not just say, here's the solution to your problems, right?
Yeah, that's better put. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Luckily, he was willing to take it on with us and help
that's
us with
good.
it.
One of the things that you mentioned that's really impactful is that you're talking about the friends in the community that you serve. These aren't ministry projects, and people are not projects. They're people. They become friends. You start to work alongside and minister alongside each other. And, we need to realize that we all need ministering to. We're not called just to minister to others. It is about one anothering in the kingdom. It's about receiving from and giving to. And this mutual giving and receiving anywhere that you serve is so vital and so important, or else it's going to fall on flat ears, and it's going to fall flat because it's not whole. It's just one-sided. Have you found that you've been able to do that in Hamburg? Have you been able to find some of these friends to start to journey with?
Absolutely. I am blown away by this principle that God at work, and that He is drawing people to Himself, and by partnering with Him, we encounter people that's wanting what we have to give, and they become deep friends.
Yeah.
And a part of that process for me was realizing that the brand of discipleship and leadership that I'm attracted to is discovering the passion people have, the kingdom passion they have, and help empower them towards that, serve them in that. At least that's our role as what I feel my role is at the moment as an outsider, is come alongside people in that way and empower them towards the many that they will reach. And in the process, we become deep friends. Yes. So what has been surprising is we came. The invitation to come was to serve a small migrant community in the city, but in the process, we've made some really deep friendships with some German professionals in the city. And just this morning, I had a fantastic dream session with one of these friends of something that he wants to start that I really believe could be deeply impactful. Nice. In the city. And it's such a joy to be invited into that space, into into those dreams people have.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more fun to work with people's passion than trying to manage people. I really am not good with managing people. I much rather prefer working with someone's passion and helping with who we can.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's something that's absolutely necessary. As you're living with Jesus in the workplace with young professionals, how's that? How do you get rejuvenated and refreshed so that you can be a part of life in the city? I know it's taxing at times. This past year has been really difficult. Lots of lockdowns in Hamburg. Where do you get your rejuvenation with Jesus from?
Yeah, this is such an important question, a good question, I believe. We came to a point in 2019 where if it wasn't for a spiritual mother and father with a lot more experience than we had, we would have died here. At least that's how it felt. Sorry, my English is not. We not physically died, but we were so overwhelmed by just by the change and the work and some of the brokenness we were experiencing with the people we were serving. And they encouraged us to say, listen, find the cycles of replenishment, that the things that replenish you, and start building a rhythm of doing that. So here are some of the things that we're practicing, or that I'm practicing. A Sabbath, weekly Sabbath, is something that I never before, getting really stuck in the work year, religiously practiced, but I do now, and I love it. I cannot wait for tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow is my day. And what Sabbath means for me at the moment is doing anything that brings me to worship. So I love mountain biking. And if I go mountain biking in a beautiful forest, it's like I would break out in worship. I mean, I just love I can't stop thanking God that I can be there.
Yeah.
Or I love making things. So if I get a creative output, and it could be with a friend, that would be, for me, replenishing. So I found a young German friend that's a maker, and when we get together, we just dream about stuff we want to make, and we have a one little project that we're doing together, and that's also an opportunity for discipleship, right? And I would say another thing is just simply the daily Sabbath as well. It's become incredibly important for me to speak to God and listen, and I need to do it constantly for the people that I'm running with, and the decisions I have to make. So before I go into a meeting, I have to process and pray for the meeting. And some of the rhythms that we started practicing that has had a real impact on us. One thing that I haven't been able to do that I feel I should add to that is a day of solitude, a regular day where I break away. And I can reassess the direction we're moving in as a team and a family, and just make sure that we're still on, in our bullseye, because there's so many requests on time and things changing consistently. And now with COVID, it's very difficult to plan a year in advance. We're planning 3 months in advance at the moment, so we're constantly adapting. And so it would be good for me to have a regular time where I can think and pray through, the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and establishing that rhythm now, before you become a father, is going to be really important. And you're gonna have double duty, so it's gonna be a lot of work, Marko. So you're going to need that rhythm, and maybe some rest is going to shift and change for you. And what does Sabbath look like? When you have some little ones running around, which is going to be really pretty amazing. You mentioned Maxie. For a long time, you guys didn't know if you were able to have children, but it looks like there's a miracle that's happened. And you're about ready to be a father. In the next month or so, right?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. This is a big part of our story. So in the beginning, I mentioned that Max was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 3 months into our marriage. It got to a point quite early on where she was so in pain that she couldn't walk or dress herself. And the diagnosis was the doctors predicted that she would be in a wheelchair before the age of 30.
Wow.
That we would never be able to have a family. Max had a hip replacement in her 20s. And we were walking around with a lot of disappointment and pain because of this experience. And over the years of going on mission with Jesus, he healed us of so much fear, bitterness, disappointment, and pain, to the point where we could start hoping again.
Yeah.
And late last year, late last year, we found out we are pregnant, and this is without. we have tried. Let me just say, over the last 13 years, we've tried surrogacy, we've tried IVF, we've tried so many different things, and every time it fell flat, and it was deeply disappointing. And so we felt, no, well, maybe there's a different adventure that Jesus has for us, right?
Yeah.
One thing that did happen was a friend in the Netherlands called us up in middle last year and said, I had this crazy dream. We were all at a party, and Maxie, you were pregnant. Your belly was so big; it was unnaturally big. And then, and again, a Syrian friend said to us once, well, I had this dream that you guys were going to have children. And we just, you get to that point where you're just like, we know anything is possible for our King. Thank you. But, this one thing, we're not sure.
Yeah.
You have faith for things, but for this, we felt like, we don't know. And so anyways, late last year, Maxie says she thinks she's pregnant, and we have to go do tests. And we go to the doctor. She comes out and she's ashen. She says, Marko, it's twins. And Joshua, I was floored. I could not speak for at least 30 minutes. I was just overwhelmed by this. And what this has done is just, again, and I don't know how many times it's needed for my heart to encounter God's outrageous goodness and grace and ability to redeem any hurt, any pain, anything. And it's been a huge tipping point for us because, it's just created a huge amount of faith in our hearts for what God can do. So we're expecting twins, identical twins, 2 little girls. They're totally healthy, and they should be arriving in 5 weeks. What's amazing is we've never had twins in our families that we know of. And I always secretly dream of having twins. Can you believe it? I always dream of having twins. And again, this is without any help. And Jesus did it.
And Jesus is so amazing. I mean, He's also set you up to a place where, you're living next to a pretty amazing hospital for twins, right?
Yeah. And we didn't plan to come here to have kids. Listen, that was not part of the plan. But Germany is amazing. This the support we've received, especially for twins. The hospital that we've been going to, it's been a fantastic experience. So we're very thankful.
Yeah, God is so good and so amazing, and He's able to redeem the things that we think are broken, and He's able to see that, and it's so fun to see this. I'm so excited for you, and Maxie and the girls. I'm really excited about seeing these little girls and seeing them grow up.
Thank you.
It's gonna be fun. You're gonna have a whole house full of girls, Marko. Maxie she has a bunch of sisters. She has a house full of girls, and now you have even more.
Yeah,
it's good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
So, there's a few things I'd like to ask, but before that, as you think now, as you're on the precipice of becoming a father, from what you have learned in the past, 10 years, 15 years with Jesus, being on mission with Him, what are your hopes for your girls as they're born? What advice would you give to them?
Yes, my answers might be different.
They will be different. That's why I want to hear it now.
Yeah, this is actually something I'm praying about a lot. But I would say a life of delight, a life of delighting in God, living out of delight in Jesus, and not duty. With that, let me just say that then.
That's good.
Yeah.
So what's if you for everything that you know now, if you could go back and talk to your 21-year-old self, what would you say to him?
Don't be so ambitious. Don't feel like you have to make things happen. And I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so I can be I only learned this about myself quite recently, and I would have hoped to tell myself the same thing: is fall deeply in love with Jesus and his mission, and just simply join him.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have learned the lesson earlier that God is in control. That I can. He's a good shepherd, and that I can, with a lot of rest and peace, I can just submit to his goodness, and he'll take me where he wants me to be, and I can enjoy the process with him, the adventure with him.
Yeah, let's just enjoy the adventure. Is there anything that you've been reading or watching that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, everybody's been watching the Chosen series, right? No,
Yeah.
okay, all right. No, so it's still quite new year, but no, I reading. Let me quickly think. I mean, I'm reading again the little book, The Father Heart of God by Floyd, just now, and because we had to help someone through disappointment, and then that book touches on how to deal with disappointment and leadership, and it was stunning. And then I just started reading the whole book again. It's a simple little book, but it's impactful, powerful book. So I would recommend that to anybody.
The Father Heart of God.
Yeah, it's a lovely book. Then we just a friend translated the book simply speaking about Jesus. I think The Art of Non-Evangelism, and we translated it to German. And this book is so popular here. And so I've been going through it again with a friend. It's a lovely little book by Medearis.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
And then one of my all-time favorite books on discipleship still, Dallas Willard, Living in Christ's Presence. I'm just listening to that again now. It's changed my life and how I look and think about discipleship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks, Marko. Well, it was just a privilege to talk to you. It was fun to chat. So I like to get this any excuse I have to hang out with you. We haven't done it in person for a long time because of COVID, so we need to do it. We need to get together.
Yeah, I would love that. And I want to thank you, Joshua. You and Meredith, you set the table for me and Max there in the Middle East to encounter Jesus on mission. You guys were incredible leaders, and we still look back at that time as one of the most impactful, shaping times of our lives. We're still practicing thankfulness. We still, on everybody's birthday, we would still say one thing that you love about that person.
Nice.
There's so many things that you guys taught us that we're still using. So we're thankful.
That's good. All right. Well, thanks, Marko. Really appreciate it.
Cool, Joshua.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.